joined in the studio. I've got written here, you're my presenter friend. I've never liked that phrase.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, it's like you're being paid to be my friend.
I'm not. I quite like you.
You're not my friend, or you're not being paid, or both.
It's nice to see you in the flesh, because I was watching you on the screen a couple of days ago, your YouTube channel.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that in a completely off-the-cuff and unrehearsed way. Thank you, Duncan. At Cristo_radio.
Is that where it is?
Yes.
How interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Duncan.
Well, it's good to see you, and it's good to be here.
Have you subscribed?
No, not yet.
You've not?
No, I will.
I'm very disappointed.
No, I will, because you know what it's like. You get pinged with so much stuff online. Subscribe to this, follow this, do this, and then you've got all the Black Friday deals coming down the pipe as well. I feel battered.
Do you know what I saw yesterday, though? This is a story we should be covering at some point, actually, because I saw yesterday, I think it was Which that did a report.
Yeah.
Do you know that 90% of Black Friday deals are not deals at all, and that they have been at that discounted price at some point over the last few months already? A lot of stores, they bump it up just before Black Friday and keep it at a level for a while so they don't get in trouble, and then put it back down for Black Friday.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised, because, I mean, it's just the hype, isn't it? I mean, it just whips up this frenzy of, you must buy this just before Christmas. It's a bargain, and most people don't think to check back.
And there is something, I mean, again, I think it's probably a dopamine thing, but there is something about that, oh my God, I need to do it now, and I've got myself a bargain, and this is brilliant. When you really need to take a moment when you do those things and do your research and compare it to elsewhere.
The algorithms are fascinating, because I've been looking for, go off on a tangent, I've been looking for a pair of boots, right? Okay. Because I'm a guy who lives out in the wilds of West Sussex. I'm not a London guy, you know, and I love coming in here, but I prefer my quality of life out in the fields and stuff. So I wanted some Barber Chelsea boots, because I'm getting to that age. And I was old, and I was looking online, and since then I've been bombarded with emails going, Black Friday, buy your boots here.
Don't miss them. We've got them.
It's
We're
so
holding
clever,
them.
isn't it?
You might not get them.
Yes, yeah.
Have you thought about Grenson?
No.
Grenson boots?
No.
They're
Tell me
very
about
good.
Grenson.
You can get Grenson. I mean, they last forever. They're expensive, but they last forever. But you can get, like, welted, waterproof Grenson boots. And Hunter wellies are very good as well.
Hunter are good. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Is this a symptom of middle age, where about 20 years ago we might have talked about going to the pub? Now we're talking about the best place to get wellies.
To get waterproof boots. That is...
To walk the dogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That is to walk the dogs.
Yeah.
Do you know, I bought little booties for my dogs.
Did you?
And because I didn't like their paws getting so mucky, so I bought them little booties. And when we put them on, they can't walk in them.
Yeah, what have you got, dog-wise?
Oh, I've got a little Shih Tzu poodle.
Yes.
And a little Schnauzer poodle.
Right.
So a Shih-Poo and a Schnoodle.
So I've got a sausage dog crossed with a terrier. So he's about 80% sausage, so he's got length, but he's also got a terrier's backside and a terrier's attitude, and he's not as low down as a normal sausage dog. And we got him some socks to keep his paws warm last winter, and he hates them. He actually, because sausage dogs are just full of attitude, he actually looks at his paw and looks at you and goes, what have you done? What's this about? What is this humiliation? I get it. Do you know the instructions on the boots? Because me and my partner just fell about laughing. Right. And it actually says in the instructions, do not laugh, because the dogs will know that you're laughing at them. Yeah. OK, let's talk about a couple of the stories that are making some of the front pages this morning. Where do you want to start? Well, shall we talk about Gregg?
I think we should talk about Gregg Wallace, because it's made some of the front pages. The Daily Star, the Grocer, with the picture of him sort of flexing his muscles, because of course he's been in this fitness craze lately, where he's liked showing off
the son of God's Gregg the Groper.
Yes. And
and
a three-page spread on his rather vile antics he's accused of.
Yes, of course, they're all allegations. He's denying them. His lawyers are denying them. One of the stories in the Express today talks about Penny Lancaster, who, of course, is married to, national treasure, British icon, Sir Rod Stewart, saying that Penny is ready to speak to the authorities over her celebrity MasterChef appearance. And we also know that Sir Rod took to social media to have a little bit of a pop, didn't he, at Gregg, saying he was tubby, bald-headed and ill-mannered bully. it makes you wonder with these stories. What I find interesting about this is where does banter stop and start? And also, these allegations go back to, well, they're what, over 10, 15 years ago? You know, is there any argument, I'm not saying it's my view, is there any argument to say that what might have been acceptable then is not acceptable now? And there should be some allowance for that. It also gets us into the whole area of, listen, you and I have worked all over the place. We know about presenter divas, right? We know about presenters who think they can get away with stuff because of their prominence and their celebrity.
I'm surprised I'm allowed to make eye contact with you this morning, frankly.
I am feeling a little bit violated.
Well, oh, that's how I like my guests to feel. So that's a relief. No, I think you raise a very fair point in as much as, look, I think if the groping allegations turn out to be true, that's a line. When you touch someone,
Absolutely.
That's an absolute line. But I think you raise a fair point in how much are we and TV producers, and I say we, the audience, culpable in as much as that sort of bullying television, that X Factor style TV. I mean, you look back at they come up in my feed sometimes, some of those old X Factor clips where Simon Cowell tells a contestant that they're too fat or something like that. And we all revelled in that at the time, whereas now that would be considered
That is
bullying.
a really good point, because you can look at Gordon Ramsay, you can look at Marco Pierre White, all of whom were given licence to ramp up this pantomime act and humiliate people because the bit of hake on the plate wasn't cooked well enough or whatever.
And that's exactly why we're watching.
And people go, oh, this is outrageous, oh, look, he's made her cry or whatever. And you could argue we're slightly culpable because, you know, we enjoyed that stuff. That's why people watched it. It's like, oh, look at how I can't believe he said that. There is a hunger for that kind of stuff. But there's got to be some responsibility from the world of media. If you ramp this up, if you expect people like that to kind of like make those comments about people, at some point someone's going to go, actually, that upset me, or that scarred me for life, or that's dented my confidence.
But then if you go into that show knowing that that's the show you're going into, and you're an adult, to what extent... You know, I always feel sorry for the people who are in series 1 of something like that, because you say to yourself, well, OK, maybe they didn't know and maybe they would have felt bullied. But if you're going on to the X Factor or MasterChef or a Gordon Ramsay show, Hell's Kitchen or whatever, and it's the 4th series and you go on it and you say, well, I feel bullied, well, surely you would have known.
You'd hope that people would go into such things with their eyes wide open. But we don't live in that climate now, do we, as self-responsibility? I'm in danger of sounding like a really old git here, but I think I'm with you in so much as if you go into a show like that where there's maybe a sparky presenter or a host or whatever, surely you have to accept that there might be some stuff said that you find upsetting or it damages your confidence or whatever. But we don't live in that climate anymore. And
you have to accept, I think, when you go onto these shows, and again, we're not justifying any of his behaviour, because clearly what's happened here when he's being accused of this sexual impropriety and definitely the physical contact, if any of that turns out to be true, I mean, this is he's absolutely over. But the most important lesson you have to learn is when you're watching Strictly, when you're watching X Factor, when you're watching MasterChef, Strictly are not looking for the next best dancer. The X Factor was never looking for the next best singer. MasterChef is not looking for an amazing chef. They're looking to make amazing television. And if they end up with a great dancer at the end of it, or they end up with a singer at the end of it, great. But it's about the TV show. It's not about actually the outcome that they are claiming they're looking for in that television show, because it's about being entertainment. And looking ahead in about 10 minutes' time, we'll bring you some sport. And then after 8 o'clock, we're going to be debating whether the assisted dying bill going forward is a good or a bad thing. And Duncan Barkes, the broadcaster, joins me live here on Talk, looking through some of those stories. Now, I don't know if you heard before, but obviously the assisted dying bill progressing through the House of Commons, winning the vote last night on that. This is a story that I agree with. This is an action that I agree with on principle. I think that you should be able to end your life if you wish to. But I have grave concerns that safeguards won't be in place enough, and also where this legislation, when you open the door to this sort of monumental social change, it always starts off very, very considered and moderate. But then when it becomes normalised, will we end up in a situation where in 20 years' time, we're saying, because we've normalised the idea of state-sanctioned suicide, that in 20 years' time, you're a bit depressed, you're allowed to go.
It's the slippery slope argument, isn't it? And you and I are roughly in a similar place. So up until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I used to have the position which is, it's a basic human right of every individual, if they're compos mentis, to decide if they want to end their life, right? It should be your decision and nobody else's. You should have that right. And
that's actually a very right-wing view, in as much as a very small state view, because it's actually almost nothing to do with the state if I want to what I do with my body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I shifted a little bit. And I shifted a little bit because obviously on the run-up to this vote yesterday, there was more and more coverage, more and more interviews, and there was some... I watched a bit of the debate in the House yesterday, and there were some very compelling arguments for and against. But I come back to 2 points. One, we talk about the NHS and the pressure it's constantly under. Well, if this goes through, it's going to be under more pressure. It's going to cost more money if you're going to have assisted dying. That's part of the NHS. And also, I have a big fear about coercion as well, because, and that taps into your normalisation point a little bit, that almost if our mindset changes as a nation, which is, well, you know what, you can always end your life if you want to, because you're in a position where you can make that decision. You're not too far away, are you, from people thinking, I don't want to be a burden to my family. Yes. I don't want to be a burden to the health service. There's like some kind of national religion, so we must protect it. And that concerns me greatly.
I absolutely am with you. And even if that's not, even if we have safeguards in place now about that within this legislation progressing, will we end up in a situation in 20, 30 years' time where it becomes normal to say, well, actually, like I said, it's not even a life-ending physical condition. It could be that I have a mental health problem. I mean, we've seen it in some countries where people with mental health problems choose to end their lives.
We have. We're going to see an interesting situation develop, because it still has a long journey to go through Parliament. It's got to have a number of other readings as well. There's a committee that's going to be set up, and there will be amendments tabled, and that is the right and proper process. Couple of thoughts to bolt on to this. I'm astounded that there was only about 5 to 5.5 hours debate about this yesterday in the House of Commons before the vote. That's not a great deal of time for something that is so significant.
You're so right. You're so right. And that is ridiculous.
5.5 hours, and there were reports this morning of some MPs. So you've got Rebecca Smith, who's a Conservative MP for South West Devon, saying that she didn't get a chance to speak yesterday. You've got Rosie Duffield, Labour MP, well, I think now currently an independent MP for Canterbury. She was a Labour MP, saying that she didn't get a chance to speak yesterday. And you wonder how many other MPs didn't get a chance to speak yesterday. I mean, this is such a big thing. I want every member of Parliament to have the opportunity to voice their views or to share the concerns of their constituents. And it appears that's not happened.
And also, at one point, I remember a few weeks ago, they were saying, we really want to rush this through before Christmas.
Yeah.
And if there's one piece of legislation that we should not have the word rush,
exactly that.
It's this one. It's
I agree.
Without a doubt. It really is an absolute minefield, and maybe it's one of those pieces of legislation where we all agree with it, or many of us agree with it in principle, but actually when it dawns on you it coming in practice, is it something that we are perhaps not able to accept? Mick in Wallington says, if they can't execute people safely, how can we trust assisted dying, says Mick in Wallington. But we don't execute people in this country generally, do we?
Not yet, no.
By the way, just going back to your point about the NHS, and being a little bit vulgar, you think it will cost the NHS more money, but also ultimately, would it not save the NHS some money rather than keeping people alive who perhaps do not have any kind of quality of life, but need particular 24-hour medical care?
My NHS point, my concern about the NHS is not just financial, it also extends, and you don't have to dig too far back or too deeply to read about numerous scandals that have happened right across the National Health Service in this country over the last 30 to 40 years, from avoidable deaths in various hospitals to the wrong medication being given, etc. And if I'm pushed to it, and you've pushed me to this, I don't necessarily trust, I don't have enough trust in the NHS to do this in a proper way.
And also the scandals that we saw a lot during COVID about do not resuscitate, and so therefore people without their families' full knowledge being allowed to die, and or not being there was no intervention on those people.
That.
And will we end up in a situation where that happens? Will mistakes be made? Will someone... Oh, it's a
I don't want to upset anyone listening who's part of the medical profession, but you don't have to make too much of a leap, do you, to imagine a conversation where you've got someone who's terminally ill and a doctor saying to the family, well, of course you have this option. And there'll be this mindset, I think, with some people, which is doctor knows best. Because you work on the basis that a health professional probably is more informed than you are about the medical condition of your spouse or your grandparents or whatever. I don't like it. I come back to the point that I made earlier. I'm genuinely, my main takeaway this morning is 5 to 5.5 hours worth of debate for something that's so significant and will change the nature of how this country treats death is not enough time in the House of Commons.
Huge societal social change. It's absolutely one of the biggest in history. I wonder why they're not giving it enough time. It's bizarre to me. 0344 499 1000 if you wish to join the conversation. Let's do a little taste of the texts that are coming in. Apparently, by the way, Duncan, have you got the Biscuit app?
I got the what?
The Biscuit app.
I don't know, what is it?
If it's not
some weird dating coupling app, is it? Or
does it steady on?
Well, I just don't know. I'd like to think
between us this morning.
I'd like to think there's an app about getting biscuits delivered to you.
Well, apparently it's similar.
Excellent.
If you download it and then start it every time you go for a walk. Right. I don't know if this is true, Leon. Are you winding me up? You can earn biscuits that turn into M&S and Costa vouchers with a maximum of 60 minutes of walks per day.
Who sent this in?
Leon from Newcastle.
Is he suggesting that I need to do a bit more walking because I'm a bit on the chunky side?
I think it's in relation to your boots.
Oh, my boots?
Your boots thing. Right. It was when we were talking about the boots.
To be honest with you, I would do most things for a biscuit. I won't lie.
You're right. Get rewarded for walking your dog. We're a free-to-use pet rewards app that treats you for walking and taking care of your dog. I don't know how I feel about that.
Hang on, who gets the biscuit? The dog walker or the dog?
The dog walker.
Oh, that's all right then.
But also, I don't know how I feel about that because I don't want to incentivise you to look after your dog. You should just look after your dog.
Yeah.
But if I get some M&S biscuits, that would be fine. I bought some... There's a new M&S that's just opened near me, new M&S food.
I love those places, aren't they?
So it was an M&S shop that was half clothes and a bit of food, and they've now just made it into a food one.
Brilliant.
Oh, my word. My social calendar is so empty now, I went there for the opening.
And why not?
And... oh, my word. It is amazing. And I bought myself a couple of days ago some, those extremely chocolatey M&S biscuits. Have you ever had them?
Yeah.
And they're 60% chocolate. They're more chocolate than biscuit.
Filth. I'm a big fan of that particular brand, and I'm a big sausage fan.
I know you're a big sausage fan.
I make my own sausages, but I also buy a lot of sausages.
Do you know, when I first met you, I thought, you're a man who knows a sausage.
I like a sausage. I like making my own sausages, but also I like the M&S. Have you tried them? They do these little cocktail sausages in a cardboard... I think they're called posh dogs, I think.
I'm more full size.
Well, there's quite a few of these in a pack.
No, I like a full-size sausage.
But they're very good. They're good car snacks. If you're driving somewhere, I think it's legal. You can have the little cardboard pack open. I drive an automatic, and you can stick it there. And it's like as you have to deal with
eating something.
Well, as you have to deal with Sadiq Khan's 20-mile-per-hour speed limits through London, which I had to endure earlier. There's nothing else to do as just snaking along. So why not pop in a cocktail sausage?
Let's just hope he never introduces an ultra-low sausage zone.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. Lots that we have been discussing, lots that we've been talking about from the newspapers that we're discussing this morning. Joyanne, morning to you. Danny as well. So many of you are making nice comments about me being here. And Duncan Barkes, the broadcaster, is with me. I would never be so self-indulgent as to read out compliments.
No.
But Danny says, great to wake up with you again. No, I'm not going to do that. But thank you, Chrissy. Thank you to so many of you. Nick, Lance, Carol, Jem. Really, really nice to have you this morning. And in actual fact, Jem says, this is good news regarding assisted dying. We need to move on from the dark ages and support dying people by helping them have a bearable end of life when suffering from a terminal illness. Interesting interesting point that you are making. Let's talk about the Times.
Yes.
Because I think that this story would be absolutely... Oh, no, not the Times, sorry. It's the Telegraph, actually, isn't it?
Binns?
No, Zelensky.
Oh, Zelensky, yeah.
Because I think this story would be absolutely... much... If it weren't for everything else that's going on at the moment, I think that this would be absolutely huge. This is, if you're just joining us, Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that he would give some territory, cede territory to Russia to end the war for the first time. My question is this Zelensky taking hold of the narrative here so that when the inevitable deal is done with Putin by Trump, it looks like, well, this was something I wanted all along?
I think it's exactly that, and it makes the inside pages of the Times as well, and it's this idea that a deal needs to be cut. And I think you're right, Cristo. I think it's been fueled by the president-elect, Donald Trump. When he hits the White House in January, he famously said he could end the war within a day, didn't he? I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
And I think this is Zelensky controlling the narrative, saying, well, I'd look at a deal, let us join NATO, and Russia can keep some of the territory that they've already occupied. What's really interesting about this, and I forget which paper it was in, but it's got a quote from the head of MI6, a guy called Richard Moore, who's raised concerns about this, saying if you do this, if you cut this kind of deal with Putin, he will not stop there, because he will see that he can invade a country or go further into a country, and ultimately there'll be some kind of deal cut, but he still creates, or rather he still gains more land. And this is quite significant, because Richard Moore, who's the head of MI6, rarely speaks out given his position. So I thought it was quite interesting he's making these concerns.
Isn't the key to that then that Ukraine has to then become that formal member of NATO? Won't that offset that? Because this is all about NATO. This is all about Putin believing that NATO is encroaching too close to Russia, and that it's been going on for too long, and and also that is something that irritates me actually about the narrative around all of this, because many people in the West sort of shrug their shoulders, act completely surprised that this has happened, when in actual fact it's been on the cards for a long time. That doesn't excuse Putin's vile actions, but we need to look at how we've got here. If Ukraine become formal NATO members, then won't that mean that Putin would say, well, OK, I have gained some land. However, the result of gaining that land is that what is left over is now formally NATO territory, meaning that actually I haven't really achieved my goal of keeping NATO away. In actual fact, NATO are now closer. So Zelensky sort of gets his win with NATO, but and Putin doesn't quite get everything he wants.
But he can still sell to the Russian people that we won because we've got this land.
But he has to. You've got to give him a win.
You've got to give him a win.
He won't leave otherwise.
Both of them are in a situation now as leaders that actually I think they want to be seen to be gaining something out of this. You've got the threat to Zelensky. You've got this guy called Keith Kellogg, great name, who Trump is putting in to basically deal with Ukraine when he gets into the White House. And Keith Kellogg has hinted that unless Zelensky is prepared to look at some kind of deal, i.e., I think, agree to a deal that Trump is going to create, that the US will stop supplying weapons to Ukraine. And that is massively significant. So Zelensky...
And also Europe can't afford
to
solely give the weapons
to
Ukraine.
So Zelensky's got to look at that. And I think from a political angle, both Putin and Zelensky would be favourably looking at some kind of solution if it allowed both of them to go, yeah, well, we've got what we wanted here. It might not be 100% what they wanted, but it allows them to stop this war, which I think increasingly some people are getting quite tired of.
I absolutely agree. And obviously, the problem is, you're quite right, war is PR. And both sides need a win. Zelensky gets a win saying, look, there we go. I've got my NATO membership. We are now safe, but we've just had to give away a little bit of land. Putin gets, look, we've got this land. They had to give us some of this. I've got a win as well. It's how long that uneasy peace can last with Putin knowing that there is yet another country. And let's obviously look at Sweden and I think Finland, who also now are looking to formally join NATO too. So how much of a win is it for Putin when there is actually now much more increased NATO territory for him just to have got a little bit of Ukraine? I wonder whether that is the win for Putin that the head of MI5 is saying that he thinks it is.
Well, he's not saying it's a win, the head of MI6. What he's saying is that if you cut a deal, he will see it as an opportunity to go and do the same elsewhere. Your counterpoint is absolutely bang on the money, which is, well, elsewhere potentially could mean a NATO country, couldn't it? And that's when it becomes incredibly messy.
Yeah, or that country becomes a NATO country. So he goes into another country and the same thing happens. He gets a little tiny bit of land, but then that country becomes a NATO country because of that little bit of land. So therefore it becomes counterproductive to what Putin wants to, the point Putin wants to make, which is NATO's too close. So I take what MI6 is saying, but I also just want this to be over. I think that people are dying, and I don't think that there is an appetite for this, and I don't think when you're also looking at the fact that, which has not been as reported as it should have been, it's absolutely a huge part of this, you actually have North Korean troops in Ukraine at the moment.
You do.
That is huge.
It's huge. It is huge. And I mean, just going back to the appetite that probably doesn't exist anymore, politically, once Trump is in the White House, he won't want anything to do with this, right? The American people won't want their money being spent on weapons in Ukraine. You've got on both sides of the fence, actually, Russia and in Ukraine, you've got young men being dragged off the streets, have been forced into the armies to fight this war. Ultimately, that will only end up with support for the war from the people in both countries diminishing, I think, because it's been ongoing for so long.
Yeah, and you've got other factors, other countries eyeing this up and looking. I personally believe that again, I know more than the head of MI6, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just making that clear this morning. But where I would be looking, to me, the threat isn't that Putin feels like he's got a little bit of win by territory. The threat to me from this is China and Taiwan.
Yeah.
And China looking at this and saying, well, actually, OK, we might end up with a bit of Taiwan as a result of all of this. That's where I would be looking as the threat as a result of conceding a bit to Putin, and not Putin himself. But hey, there's a reason I'm sat here and I'm not the head of MI6, though I am now available. I'd be terrible at that.
What, being a spook?
I couldn't keep a secret to save my life. I'd forget, I'd come on here and be like, oh my God, you never guess what happened in Russia.
You'd be on your second dirty martini game. Listen, have a look at this.
Yeah. Oh my God, I've got these secret papers this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have a look at them. Oh, they're awful.
Look at my magic pen.
Exactly. Oh no, I've shot you. Sorry, by accident. You did. Okay, lots for us to discuss. But again, today, aggression wins, says Mick on this is a text. Putin, Iran, Assad, China, North Korea have all expanded due to aggressive totalitarian aims. The West is just about blocking them, but are weak, says Mick. Well, we weren't weak when we were expanding, though, a big military alliance on the doorstep of some of these countries and saying that they couldn't join. And, OK, doesn't make an excuse for killing innocent people, but how would we feel if that was us? If that was us, we would be doing what Putin is doing right now. And that is a point, I think, that is rarely made, but is a point that needs to be made.